Gen Z is entering the workforce with new perspectives and expectations.
In this podcast, we're here to listen to their stories and experiences, their successes and frustrations, and help employers understand the mindset and perspectives of the up-and-coming workforce.
Employers can't dictate what their young employees find meaningful. What they can do, however, is empower them to create their own sense of purpose and authentic connections.
Our curriculum is designed to help them do exactly that. East Valley Leader Lab is committed to paving the way for more curious, engaged, and connected young professionals in the workplace.
Hi, I'm Amanda Stradling, and this is Tim Eskew. We are the East Valley Leader Lab, and this is our podcast, Mind and Body at Work. If our content resonates with you, and we hope it does, we hope that you'll click on the link in our show notes for a description of our newest offer, Helping Gen Z Thrive at Work. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, today we have a very exciting guest, Rachel Hanson. Tim, could you unlock this for me?
Sure.
Rachel is tuning in with us from Minnesota, and we're so excited to have her. I want to tell you a little bit about her. Rachel is a collaborative educator and multimedia content creator who blends storytelling, technology, and inclusive teaching practices to create safe spaces for learning and healing. With a strong foundation in higher education and a passion for student-centered teaching, she brings creativity and care to on-the-spot support and classroom teaching. So thank you so much for bringing your expertise here today, Rachel. Thanks for joining us. Here you go.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this show so much that I'm just delighted to be here as a guest.
Oh, great. I'm so glad to have you. Rachel has attended some of our courses before, so she knows a lot about us, and we're excited to learn even more about her. Let's jump into some questions. Tim, you want to take it away?
Sure, you want me to start?
Yeah.
So, Rachel, you've been in the workforce for a while, maybe 10, 12 years, in that range?
Oh, that's such a gracious thing for you to think, Tim. So
I didn't want to overshoot it.
No, so I have been, I hesitate a little bit. So I'm going to say I've been working for money as a tax-paying citizen for actually about 20 years. I got my first job at 16 years old.
Okay.
And I have just been working since then.
So that's a long run in the workforce.
Yes.
And how would you say, so we're thinking today about these new kids coming into the workforce. How would you say work demands in organizations have changed since you've been working?
Sure. I love this question so much. I think that what we are really seeing with our newest addition to the workforce, right, our Gen Zers, is a little bit of a pushback, right? As somebody who is a millennial, my generation of worker really got a lot of, I'm going to say hate. It feels like a strong word, but I think in this case it's maybe the right one.
Some stigmas, right?
That would be, that actually feels a lot better. Thanks, Amanda.
Well, I'm at the top end of millennial, and I don't want to collect any hate. So we'll just say a little bit of stigmatization there.
Right. That we came into the workforce really wanting a little bit of balance. We were really the first generation of people where it was absolutely necessary for all the adults in the family to have a job.
True.
Right. I think when I was growing up, it was generally fine, right, for one adult to be staying at home and taking care of the home things while another person went out and earned the money. So kind of coming up in something that is, for a lot of us, is a new dynamic. There weren't a lot of adaptations in the workplace, right? There was still very much an expectation that we were going to be fine working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And it turns out that we weren't fine. And so now I think that we really are seeing a shift in the workplace for younger adults going, okay, we see the millennials, we see the people who are, right, like our day-to-day managers, uh, they're really tired and they're having a really hard time. And we don't want that for ourselves. And so there really is a push in a swing from the demand to um, you're on the job and you're on the job all of the time to like, no, like let's step back a little bit. Maybe we are just hopefully working 40 hours a week and having a little bit more sustainability.
Yeah, so that's kind of a reference to the culture of the workplace, right? We had some decades
Right.
where it just seemed like we expected people to work longer and longer. The demands were greater and greater. Organizations, were pushing to be more and more successful. So one of the cultural changes has been, I'm hearing you say, one of the cultural changes you've noticed is people are coming in and saying that that kind of culture is not what we're signing up for. Are there other
Exactly.
are there other ways that you've seen the culture change in your experience in the workplace?
Yeah. So I think, and I'm kind of looking to the side here at my notes as well, um, is that for those of us like myself who work in the public sector, right? Like we're government employees, um, there has also kind of been this expectation of doing less with, or doing more with less, rather. I apologize. Um, and there's a bunch of reasons for that, and this isn't a political show, and so I will kind of just leave that there. Um, but right, like really kind of an idea that that there's an expectation that we're all going to be working really, really hard to maximize profits, sometimes at the expense of our personal sustainability. Um, and I know I mentioned that a little bit, right? But that really is a phenomenon that I see in the workplace. Um, and then the other two things that I really wanted to touch on in this first question that we're talking about uh, is right, like workplace norms around remote work. Right, of course, people
Hmm.
were working remotely pre-COVID, and now it's pretty typical, right, for a lot of us to have fully remote schedules or hybrid work schedules.
Yeah,
Um,
depending on the
yeah,
profession.
yeah, definitely. Um, but then there's an expectation that if you are set up to work remotely, well, right, you could just work all the time, right? And so there's kind of a tussle there. I think the other workplace demands that we are seeing, that we're kind of in the middle of a paradigm shift, is around gendered expectations in the workplace.
Hmm.
Um, of course, I mentioned a minute ago that, um, right, all the adults in the family have to have jobs, right? And we're just talking about like a job to make ends meet, right? There's a bunch of other good reasons that you might want to have a career, but uh,
But
being
it's become
alive is expensive.
economically
Yes,
necessary. Yeah.
exactly. Um, and so we are also kind of shifting from, uh, I mean, really like an expectation of like the woman in a heterosexual relationship being the one that's available for all of the domestic stuff, right? Like if you have a kid who's sick at school, or this is actually a very recent example in my family, if your child refuses to get on the bus at the end of the school day, right, we still are in this space where like mom is going to get that phone call first before dad. Um, but that is but the nature of uh, our family partnerships is changing in a way that means uh, right, like maybe women are going, actually no, I'm not available all the time to bring somebody to a doctor's appointment or to pick the kids up after school if they decide that today is the day they're not going to get on the bus. uh, and so that's changing in our family lives, and it also then has to kind of necessitate a change in our work lives as well, right? Like, when are we scheduling meetings, or Um, are we going to assume that men are more reliable than women, or right? Like there's all of these kind of expectations and norms that we have socially that are kind of in a space of flux right now, I think.
Yeah, interesting. My son-in-law is a stay-at-home dad. So my daughter works full time and mostly out of the house because of the nature of her job. And so I'm getting to observe that firsthand. It really shifts. There's an adjustment to the roles, right? They don't switch, but there's an adjustment to the roles.
Yeah, and those kind of
Right.
adjustments have to be made more and more. The schools need to be calling dads as well. Companies need to expect that either parent might need to take a sick day to take care of a child. Just a lot of adjustments. This is something you have personal experience with, but also this was also your field of study for your degree, right? You did gender studies?
That's correct.
This is something that's probably shifted a lot throughout your work career and your educational pursuits as well.
Right. Well, you're totally right. And I think, so I work in public higher education, right? So like academia is a big part of just like my regular everyday life.
Yep. Your education and
Um,
your profession is in education too.
right.
So
Like, yeah, I mean, and this is a little bit of a trip. I'm also an alumni at the university that I work at. Like, it's a lot and it's everywhere in my own life. So sometimes having a conversation about personal sustainability feels a little weird to me because there's not a lot of separation between like my personal identity and my employment, um, just for a bunch of different reasons.
So, Rachel,
But
think about
uh,
because you hire and supervise some of these young folks, new people coming into your
right.
organization. So, can you think of any examples, stories from people who work with you of how they're dealing with the demands, how they're dealing with the culture, or not?
Yeah, I think that we are seeing, or at least like what I am seeing as somebody who's in middle management, are uh, people that I would consider to be young adults who, forgive me, I'm trying to think about how to say this. I don't want to say that they are not loyal to their jobs, and I think that there's a perception of that sometimes. Um, but they are a lot more quick to identify when something isn't working for them and making a shift. Um, and I think the most successful young adults making, who are identifying that and then working to make a change, um, are communicating about that, right? They're not just in their own heads thinking, oh, this isn't working for me and I'm going to quit, right? Like I would say often that's not what's happening. What I am seeing happening more is young adults who are verbalizing this, and they're able to articulate what they need in a way that I think is really impressive.
that's wonderful. Those difficult conversations are a skill set we talk a lot about in the Leader Lab, being aware enough and centered in your own care that you can bring that awareness to a conversation, and you can move from your care to your commitments and figure out why the action isn't lining up how you want. And those are such important conversations to have, and especially for the younger generation that is finding their place.
Right. And I think care is, maybe it's a little woo woo, but I think that care is really such a critical part of this whole conversation, right? Because um, like, I think it's great, right? We have young adults who are very committed to caring for themselves. Um, right, but they're also very forward looking. And Tim, I think to your question, I think that's also kind of how they're handling like their own entrance into like a more professional workspace. Um, is that they're going, okay, like maybe I don't have a nuclear family unit right now, right? Like I don't have a spouse and I don't have children. Um, but we're also living in a space where those aren't the only people in your life that need care. Right? Like we have people who are caring for aging parents. Um, right? They might be part of like a more thoughtful, um, like care-based community where people who are not related to each other are taking care of each other. And they're a lot more thoughtful about uh, what they need so that they can receive care and so that they can also give care in a meaningful way. And that, not wanting to make really broad generalizations, but I think that that's something that is more important to uh, our Gen Z colleagues than it ever has been to another generation entering the workforce.
Yeah, and you pointed out just at the outset of that, um, you can interpret those behaviors, that self-care and forward thinking, other ways, selfishness, not loyal to the organization. It's different from what we've expected in the past, what we've seen in the past. So that's great to get, another perspective. We'll be talking to some of those folks that are just entering the workforce, and we're looking forward to hear their perspective. I think you've got a good beat on it.
Well, thank you. I'm excited for those episodes to come out too.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're seeing a lot of them stepping up and having these conversations, but sometimes they don't have those skills, and they're just kind of keeping it internally, their dissatisfactions, and they're quitting. Do you see that happening as well?
Uh, so where I am professionally, not as much.
Good.
And I think that some of it is also because I work in a university setting. So a lot of this population of young adult that I'm working with um, are classified as student workers. But they are being a lot more strategic about looking for those natural breaking points. Right. So if you are a student with an on-campus job that maybe isn't panning out real well for you and you don't feel heard, um, right, you might be going to your supervisor and saying, uh, hey, when this semester is over, I think I'm going to step back and focus more on my classes, right? They're being a little bit more thoughtful and communicating in that way, rather than just quitting. And I think that that is actually a benefit of public sector employment. Um, and I know this is not the case everywhere. Actually, it's the case hardly anywhere, but um, in Minnesota, we have a really strong labor union
Oh, wonderful.
environment. Um, so state employees in Minnesota are all represented by at least one labor union. Um, and so like I think that that helps as well, that employees feel a little bit more protected than you would in an at-will environment. So um, I think in environments like that, phenomena that we hear about, like quiet quitting, um, if you're in a labor union, you're not gonna get fired for quiet quitting, right? In a way that you might, um, maybe in a slightly different, uh, like in a different environment where you don't maybe have those labor protections, and that I think can make a difference too. Um, Even if you don't, and I didn't intend fully to bring up labor unions, so I apologize for that. But
No, I think that's an
I think
important piece of the puzzle for worker well-being and kind of protecting the interests of this younger generation, having some protection and support there.
And it makes me just on a technical point, you said everybody in the state is covered by a union. So do they join, or they're just by default, they have membership when they take employment? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a good question to ask. Um, so it is actually against the law to mandate anybody to join a labor union. So you do have to thoughtfully join the union
Okay.
if you're interested in that. But another thing that is also true is if your position is generally uh, underneath a labor union, right? And there's like union contracts um with like wage grids and like all your fringe benefits that are all laid out. Even if you don't join a union, all of those rules still apply to you.
Okay.
Um, so even if you don't join the union, you still get a lot of benefits from union protection.
Very interesting. Cool. Thanks
Yeah.
for informing us about that. It's so interesting how every state handles worker well-being a little bit differently, and how the experience in people's personal lives can really be influenced by location.
Right. So true.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more follow-up?
Yes.
Because you're in that environment where it's kind of convenient to say, I'm going to change things up at the end of the semester, would you say you have a low retention rate of these young people entering the workforce, or you think it's about average, or what are we seeing?
Sure. I guess I would assume, kind of just based on what I see, that we have a higher than average retention rate amongst this population of young adults. Um, I mean, I think for a variety of reasons. Um, if you're a student worker and your job is kind of part of, right, like your financial aid package, um, and I say this as somebody who also was a student worker in college, you're really hard pressed to find any other job out there where like you could do your homework if you have downtime. Um, right? Like that's really valuable. Um, so I think there's a lot of value to like this population of young adults if they are able to like work at their schools to stay in those jobs. They're also often a lot better paying
Oh, really?
than jobs that you could, right, like get out there in the world outside of your school without any credentials. So, um, and like the university that I work at, almost all of our students are considered to be low income. So, right, like um, this is also a group of young adults that isn't necessarily working for experience, right? Like these are groups of people who are not pursuing unpaid internships, um, or things that maybe millennials and older generations would have seen as kind of like a normal college experience. Um, they, like, kind of like the rest of us, they are also working because they need money in addition to the experience.
Yep. The economic factor again coming into play.
Right. So yeah, I think mostly students that I am working with are graduating, and that is when they leave that employment. Because if you're not a student, you can't be a student worker anymore. But you might also see a lot of those same students come back. So when you talk about retention, I think that that's part of the conversation too.
Like yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I've been with the same employer now for 11 years, but I haven't been doing the same job for 11 years. Um, and I think that that's a piece of like that retention conversation that doesn't often get had, right? Like, I'm sure that I'm not the only one in this conversation or who's listening to this episode who has been told some version of, I don't know what we would do if you quit. And that's not great. That makes you feel trapped.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, so thinking about, if you do want to if you're an employer who wants to keep young adults around and growing, like you have to offer them opportunities for growth. You can't assume that they're going to be happy or fulfilled in the same job for, uh, well, like I would say more than like 3 or 5 years.
You think that's about the shelf life of one position without any upward motion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends so much on the job, and I know that answer is kind of a cop out, but
Sure.
but right, like if you are, I think like in a lot of organizations, not just in higher education, right, kind of a lot of those entry level roles are very customer facing, and those can wear you out so quickly, right? Like, regardless
Absolutely.
of the industry you're in, customer service can be really tiring.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for a job like that, yeah, I think the shelf life probably is like 3 to 5 years, before you go into work and you go, I can't take it if one more person screams at me because we don't have any bus passes available. And that is a real example.
And
Um,
do you think this
Sorry, go ahead.
is, yeah, do you think this is something that's changed, or this 3 to 5 year in the same position? Is that true for a lot of the generations, or has it gotten shorter, or has it gotten longer?
Yeah, I guess I would say speaking for millennials and Gen Z, um, that probably has stayed fairly consistent. Um, not speaking for my counterparts who are slightly older than me. I think that for a while now, we've lived in an environment, particularly in like that front customer facing, uh, this front customer facing roles where, right, the customer is always right. And because they're convinced of their rightness, they can be pretty mean to you.
Mm.
Um, um, I think that maybe millennials there's a little bit of a longer shelf life, but I also think that is respective of where we are in our own lives, right? Because Gen Z is a little bit younger. Um, they are just out of necessity, right? This isn't a bad thing. Uh, they're not necessarily thinking about things like, um, well, what happens if I lose my health insurance? Or, um, I've been contributing to my retirement account for a really long time, and that's not something that I want to lose. Um, and so I think it might be fair to assume that this new group of young adults in the workplace, um, are going to behave a little bit like young adults historically, right? That if they are
Yeah. They haven't
treated
invested as
poorly,
much, right? So
exactly,
they are more free to move around.
right? Um, and I think one thing that I had in my notes as I was getting ready for this episode was also kind of the idea of safety, and like the feeling of safety between generations. Um, right, and our Gen Z colleagues have, I mean, really lived in a world where uh, there very often was not a safe feeling, right? Like, I mean, these guys were, I mean, on the older end of the generation, right? Like, these guys were 3 or 4 years old um, during the events of September 11th, and then there's been a lot of global calamity in that time. And so I think I think it would be fair to say, and for managers to assume, that this is a group of young adults whose outside world has not had a feeling of safety, and they're going to make decisions that are helping them feel a little bit safer just in their regular everyday lives.
As managers and supervisors, do you, amongst yourselves, do you talk at all about psychological safety, which isn't exactly the same as safety in the outside world? But do you draw a connection there and try to create some of that, or is that a topic?
It is. And I think what I observe as somebody who is like, as she's advancing in her career, new to management, I do observe my colleagues who are a little bit older who like know all the terms and they have the academic jargon. And so we can talk about it. And I see some value in millennials coming into the workforce in these management roles to kind of take that academic piece um, and bring it more into the lived experience.
Yes.
Like that, there's the conversation, but then the implementation is we've got a ways to go, I think would be fair to say.
Well, and your age, you're at such a great, just a great time of life and your lived experience to kind of be a bridge between that older generation and the newer workers. Because, I mean, how old were you when 9/11 happened? And, a lot of these experiences were still during your formative time also. And so you kind of,
Right.
you can know a little bit about the worldview that the younger generation is coming up with because you've been affected similarly. And so you can bring some very valuable insights into that, like psychological safety kind of conversation.
Right. Right. And I don't say any of this to with the intent of like throwing anybody under the bus or anything like that. Um, I think that having these types of conversations is so valuable. Um, when we come at it from at least with the intent, even if we don't always hit the mark of seeking to understand other people, right? Um, because that hasn't always been the case in the workforce, right? The idea that you leave work at work and you leave home at home.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
when it's just not the reality for most of us.
Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
people like you with the mindset like you are stepping into leadership positions now. I think that is really powerful. Let's talk a little bit about maybe question 5, some skills and competencies that you think Gen Z could stand to develop still.
Yeah. So I think one area where I really notice my Gen Z colleagues struggling is with some of, I'm going to maybe sound like a crotchety old lady here a little bit, but some of those analog skills, right? Um, right, like I've worked with young adults who like didn't realize that you had to put a stamp on the envelope before you put something in the mail.
Oh, wow.
Or yeah, yeah. Uh, I was this did actually make me feel quite old. I encountered that in the wild and I was shocked. I was like, what do you mean that you didn't have any idea? But then, like, kind of all of the skills that go along with that, right? That you might, that there are times when you have to go someplace to accomplish a task, right? Like, you might have to go to the post office to get the stamps, or, um, you might need to like get a document notarized and go to your
Oh,
bank, right, to get a right. Um, or even things like, of course, none of us are really doing this too much anymore, but um, once in a while, it is more practical to write a check than it is to like do anything else.
that's true
Um,
still.
right, like um, I mean, I know I had to pay my rent with a check until like very recently, like within the last year. Um, because it turns out you don't always want to like go to the ATM and pull out $2,000. Like, um, but so I think some of those very analog skills that those of us who grew up in the 80s and the 90s can just developed as part of being like it was just a regular part of our world. That is something I think that is missing a little bit.
Well,
Um,
definitely, because I mean, they're total digital natives, whereas
right.
millennials are a little hybrid, you know? I mean, it's surprising to me, like my daughter who's in junior high, starting into high school, just all of her stuff is just submitted to her teacher virtually and on email. And she handwrites so seldomly. And it's just
Hmm.
all online. Her sources are all
Yeah.
online, like no physical textbooks, no anything. And every once in a while I want to try to teach her, hey, like open this book, look at the table of contents to find what you're looking for. And yeah, that kind of stuff is a little foreign to the younger
Yeah.
generation. But it's not gone entirely yet, right?
Right.
So it's something that a little bit of familiarity could help them with.
Yeah. Any
Yeah.
others? Any other?
Um, those kind of were my big ones. Like, because one thing that I think is so great about Gen Z, um, is generally how good they are at um like making connections with people across multiple modalities, right? Because they are those digital natives like Amanda was talking about. Um, right? Like we do have young adults who have just incredible communities online and in text formats, and I think that that is really cool about them. So, right, it's kind of two sides to the same coin, in my opinion, right? That
Yeah.
right,
Strengths
like
and weaknesses, sort of,
right,
with each
that
generation.
maybe
Yeah.
they're not, yeah, that maybe some of that what seems like old-fashioned analog stuff they don't know, but they are just an incredible group of people that are so good at connecting with others, in a way that I think is really amazing.
Are there things that you're doing individually, or your organization is doing, or you think should be done by the organization to help bridge some of these gaps and just help help these new people coming into the workforce be as successful and thrive as much as possible?
Yeah. So I think it would be fair to say that broadly, as we go along, things are getting better for workers all of the time. Um, right? Like, uh, kind of having the expectation that like you're not on call all the time. Uh, and I think about the things that apply to just like my own life because I can be a little selfish sometimes, right? Like things like paid parental leave, and like mandatory sick time, or um, even in my life as a parent, how much easier remote work makes everything. Um, that there might be somebody a little further along in their career whose first impulse is to go, oh, well, that's so nice for you, and make you feel a little bit guilty about, um, right? Like when you're done working at home and you turn your computer off, that's it, and you are done. Um, so I would say, like, to my other colleagues who are in management, don't make your employees feel guilty for taking advantage of the fact that things are a little bit better for them than they were for you at the same time in your life. Um, and just also encourage them to take advantage of that kind of stuff. Um, right. So I'm in the Midwest, and in the Midwest, we are really, really good at passive aggression. Like, it is a
I've
cultural
heard
trait.
that
Yeah,
before.
it is totally true. We're really good at it. So I would say if you are somebody who's listening to this and you're in the Midwest, just knock it off. Um, right? Like, being at work does not have to be a suffering Olympics. And so like, celebrate with your colleagues, regardless of their age when things are going well. Don't make them feel guilty for taking advantage of things that weren't available to you when you were younger. Um, and I would say, kind of as a piggyback to that, also keep encouraging them to improve themselves and make an environment where it's safe for them to do that. Um, so like some things that I have encountered, right? Like, don't be doing things like encouraging your employees to like get extra training or continue their education, and then on the back end make them feel like um, that's bad for you, that they're trying to advance their career.
Ah,
I don't think there's any place for that kind of idea in the modern workplace.
Would it be bad because they're missing when they're out developing new skills, or how would it be bad for the manager?
Sure. So I guess I mostly see it in the sense that uh, manager some managers that I have seen will make their employees feel guilty for wanting to leave their current role.
Oh, okay. So
So
it's
not
bad
like,
because you're gonna get new skills. You're gonna go somewhere else
right, and
or
then
get promoted.
the manager has to replace you,
Right,
and
right,
they
right.
don't want to do that. Um, I mean, I think the scheduling component could be a whole other conversation as well. Like, like that's absolutely true. Um, but I think, like, don't make your employees feel guilty because they don't want to be in the job that they are in from now until they retire.
yeah. The natural progression of the workforce now is a little different than maybe it was a long time ago. That people are going to advance and they're going to change, and it's a little more fluid.
Right. And if you do want people to stay, you need to create an environment where they're going to want to stay. Right. Like, I assume that this is true for the people that I manage just as much as I kind of just adopted into my own life as a worker. Um, Nobody owes you their loyalty just because they gave you a job one time. Um, like, that's not a fair thing to assume. Like, if you want people who are loyal to like your department or to their roles or to your organization, you need to create an environment where loyalty can thrive. It's not just something that's given uh once and expected every day.
That's
Excellent.
perfectly put. Thank you. You've talked so much about, I love the compassion that you've kind of extended toward Gen Z and just the understanding and the real insight into their experience and the non-judgmental frame that you've brought to this. You've brought up a lot of really important specific policies that help Gen Z thrive, a lot of general culture and things that need to happen. Is there anything you want to add? Because we are coming to the close of our time. Anything else you want to bring up?
Right. I can't believe it's already been almost an hour.
Yeah,
But no, this was such a great conversation. I don't have anything else that I wanted to bring up in our conversation today.
great.
Can I call out one more thing?
Yeah, anything you want to add?
I hope some young people entering the workforce will watch our show because they got a good pro tip today. You can do your homework and work at the university.
Ah.
Good place to look if you're still in that place.
It's true.
Yep. I think that's just a very good specific example of taking care of the person that is working for you, that they're not just the cog in the wheel, that they have a future that they're working on. And I think just doing your homework when there's downtime is a really cool example.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to give it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your insights and your expertise and your compassion. And thank you to our listeners. We'll see you next time. Be well and keep moving.
Thanks, Rachel.
This has been Mind and Body at Work with the East Valley Leader Lab. Please click on the link in the show notes for a description of our newest offer, Helping Gen Z Thrive at Work. This is our embodiment training to help new young workers integrate into your organization.
As always, if this content resonates with you and your cares, please like, share, and/or subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever it is you get your podcast. Be well and keep moving.